from the birth of the country, when only white men who owned property could vote, to the Supreme Court decision Buckley v. Vallejo in 1967, which overturned overall campaign spending limits. The Citizens United is nothing new, and there's a lot we could do that wouldn't require the huge effort of a constitutional amendment such as public financing. Actually, when I was still in high school, in Massachusetts, one of the things that I worked on was public funding by state referendum. We passed a referendum 2-to-1 for public funding, where if you get enough qualifying contributions of as little as $5, you get matching funds. You get a lump sum to run for state house, state senate, and the legislature refused to fund it, and the state Supreme Court forced them to sell off state property in order to fund the law, and then the legislature eventually repealed it, and that's because there wasn't a movement behind holding their feet to the fire to actually carry out the law that the people had voted for by 2-to-1. So I think it's important to realize that so long as politics is just about advertising, so long as it's just about what you see on TV, then it's a spectator sport, and whoever has the most money is going to win. But that's not the way it has to be. There's an alternative to that, and that's having independent political parties, because if people are organized, then they're not easily fooled. And that's why I'm not just running for Congress, but I'm running to build a political party, the Liberty Union. You can go to, Jerry promoted his website, so I'll throw it out there too. You can go to libertyunionparty.org and read about our slate of candidates this election.
And Chris Erickson.
Yes, the United States Congress can do two things. They can check the judicial branch, the Supreme Court of the United States, by impeaching and trying judges. And they can also propose amendments to the Constitution. So I would certainly vote for an amendment to the Constitution to take away personship from corporations, but I would also vote to impeach those justices.
Okay, and another question that's been frequently in the news recently is that of marijuana legalization. 2 states have that right now, and the movement seems to be towards legalizing. Is that something that you would support in Congress at the federal level, is legalizing and taxing marijuana? And we'll start with Mark Donka.
Well, most people probably know my background in law enforcement, and I've been in law enforcement for 34 years now. And I would not support legalizing marijuana at this point. I know a lot of people look at it and say, well, it's the same as alcohol, it's no different, it doesn't cause as many problems. I mean, it's an addictive substance, it's something that people get addicted to, they go to treatment to get taken care of. My problem is with marijuana is the enforcement end of it, what I see on the street of people driving. I look at it, there's no real test, like in drunk driving. If you have a drunk driver and they're a .08, they're legally intoxicated. The problem with marijuana, there's no such number like that. There's no way to really know for sure exactly if the person is intoxicated on marijuana. Now, I don't really want my grandkids being driven to school in a school bus by somebody that was smoking marijuana all night. And, we have no way of really knowing for sure. Granted, it's a commercial license. We could test a person and they could lose their license from that. But what about just the person driving down the road? So I would not back it. There would have to be further study, as far as I'm concerned, before we could pass something. Until we could regulate it and we could do enforcement on it, I would not be for it at all.
Peter Welch.
Well, I think that's fundamentally a state decision. When I was in the state Senate, I was a strong proponent of medical marijuana. I saw no reason for the government to interfere in the decision between a doctor and a patient about something that might alleviate pain and reduce suffering. At the federal level, and I support Vermont's approach of decriminalization of marijuana. At the federal level, though, I believe we should have deference to the states, not impose a one-size-fits-all, because this is a debate that really goes on and has to go on in states. We've had a debate and come up with decriminalization. Colorado and Washington have decided to decriminalize it altogether, and obviously all of us are going to be able to look and see how that works out. But at the federal level, I've supported efforts, one, to legalize hemp, but number 2, to have the government and its prosecution defer to states when they pass a law, as we have on medical marijuana or decriminalization. And I think that's the proper role for the federal government. I think the proper role for the state government is to decide on decriminalization legalization, medical marijuana, those important issues.
And Jerry Trudell.
Great. First, I want to say, Mark, that if you did research, you'd find that there were plenty of people in the law enforcement community who support a rational 21st century marijuana policy. Just because you're in law enforcement doesn't automatically mean that this is the opinion of all law enforcement agents.
I didn't say that. I said it
You
was my,
said,
no, I said
hold
my
it.
opinion.
Can
my
I
opinion,
finish,
okay?
or
Don't
can you
try to-
interrupt me? You're the moderator.
Finish.
Then tell him to stop interrupting me.
Well, he's not talking now, so go ahead.
Good. Thank you. Number one, just because you're in the law enforcement community doesn't mean that you should adhere to a point of view because you think everyone else in law enforcement has that. Now, secondly, I remember, so I'll give my age away, I remember the days when we didn't have a legal limit, when we had the test of walking a straight line, and policemen made me walk a straight line when I was in high school, and I walked a straight line and I wasn't intoxicated. The fact is that the legal limit doesn't say whether you're intoxicated or not. Some people are much more sensitive to alcohol than others. Some people can, quote-unquote, hold their liquor, and other people can't. So therefore, the legal limit does not accomplish its purpose, which is to keep people off the road from driving who shouldn't be driving. What we should be doing is having the common sense of the old days and having a test, making them walk the line, making, you know, the standard test that you are probably quite familiar with. Am I
Mr. Trudell,
finished?
do you feel,
Yes. Yeah.
would you support marijuana legalization at the
Yes, I
federal
would,
level?
because
Okay.
I think it's a crime to put people in jail for smoking marijuana. I think it's arcane, middle-aged, and outmoded, and a crime in itself.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Randall Meyer.
Well, I would hope there would be some adult common sense that that people have when and where to use it, if it should become legal. As far as marijuana use, I don't recommend it unless you're a jazz musician. It might help then.
That's good.
But in terms of policy, it's not really something that is as much. It's not really the government's business. They really can't stop it. It's like the prohibition of yesteryear. And but I would recommend, you know, what's the word? A more balanced approach, hanging back, seeing what happens in Colorado, see if it works, and checking the statistics pretty closely, and hoping nobody cooks the statistics, because nowadays they have, you know, they've got a think tank for everything nowadays.
So if you were elected in this election, would you foresee, if there was a vote during that term, would you vote yes or no?
Well, I wouldn't be authoring any legislation. I wouldn't be pushing for it. But if there were one to come up, I would probably side more on the side of legalizing it. Certainly for medical purposes, but in general as well. I lean that way. But I would need to see that the statistics, that it was going to be done in a safe way.
Thank you. Chris Erickson.
Yes, the Holy Bible, Old Testament, Genesis, God gave us every seed-bearing plant. That includes marijuana, poppy, coca plants. So I would make them all legal, 100% legal. And I would probably want to repeal the 1970 Federal Controlled Substances Act, because people don't belong in cages for having a drug addiction. All the drug addictions, whether it's marijuana or anything else, are based on narcotics. Some people deny that marijuana is a narcotic, but if it's a painkiller, the definition of a painkiller is generally a narcotic. So how can marijuana be a painkiller unless it's a narcotic? The best reason to make it legal is people are more likely to seek addiction treatment if it's legal.
Thank you. And Matthew Andrews, would you support legalization of marijuana?
Absolutely. I think that it's, you know, we've been talking about this issue, but I haven't heard a whole lot about the war on drugs. There's a really important book that I would recommend, one of the most important books probably to come out in the last year, called The New Jim Crow. Ever since the Jim Crow was officially repealed in the South, the drug war was ramped up. And police, I'm sure the drug war was great for the employment of police. One of the things that I've called for is a 75% cut in not just military spending, which would solve our budget issues, but in prison spending. We have really a gulag system in this country. We have over 2 million people in prisons, mostly for nonviolent drug offenses, and this is mostly because of over-policing in communities of color. and it's really, you know, so I'm for the legalization, and the Liberty Union's been very progressive on this issue. I've learned a lot from my colleagues. Peter Diamondstone has called for the public sale of marijuana at cost, because there's no way you're going to compete with the, you know, drug pusher on the corner. So we should really be selling these at cost. That would undercut the private seller, because obviously the, you know, their drug cartels are often linked with criminal activity. And Marina Brown, our lieutenant governor candidate, was talking about reparations. I think that that's a great idea, that we should be trying to restore and make whole the people who have been hurt by this war on drugs. We should be emptying out the prisons of people who've been thrown in jail for these issues, and trying to make them whole. This is really it's a public health issue. It's not a criminal justice issue.
Well said.
Okay, thank you. We have about 15 minutes left, so I'd like to start with closing statements. So first we'll go with Chris Erickson. You've run before. What reason do voters have this time to choose you to run to be in Congress for Vermont?
They've always should have voted for me, and they don't know who I am because I'm excluded from the absolute majority of debates and forums, which is a kind of hidden campaign finance for people like Peter Welch, who takes the advantage of Vermont public radio appearances without reporting it as a campaign donation, because they basically act as a political action committee promoting some candidates while excluding ones like me. I want you to vote for me. You need to vote for me right away this year, because I will do everything I can to stop the F-35 strike fighter jets from being based in Vermont. They do not belong in Chittenden County. This is a residential area. F-35 strike fighter jets are designed to be dual capable to carry nuclear bombs. They do not belong in a residential neighborhood. If you vote for me, I will work to save Lake Champlain. It's an international body of water. Peter Welch has done nothing to save Lake Champlain. The Vermont Fish and Wildlife dumps Monsanto chemicals into Lake Champlain to treat invasive species, which means to kill them, while simultaneously 1/3 of Vermonters are drawing their drinking water from Lake Champlain. Motorboats, thousands and thousands of motorboats are allowed on Lake Champlain. They are dripping drop by drop, drops of gas and oil which contain lead, while simultaneously 1/3 of Vermonters are drawing their drinking water from Lake Champlain. This has to stop. We cannot allow a natural gas pipeline underneath Lake Champlain. Natural gas pipelines are in the news year in and year out across the United States for leaks and explosions. Do you want your children swimming in Lake Champlain when there's a natural gas explosion? They'll get killed. And you can't build a natural gas pipeline underneath Lake Champlain without stirring up all the water and making a muddy mess, while simultaneously 1/3 of Vermonters are drawing their drinking water from Lake Champlain. And we've got to stop dumping treated sewage into Lake Champlain. If we have one person from Africa with Ebola before showing symptoms using a toilet in Burlington, Vermont, the toilet gets flushed, it goes out to the sewage treatment plant a short walk south of Perkins Pier on Lake Champlain, and the treated sewage goes into Lake Champlain. Voila, everybody's going to get Ebola.
That's your 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Randall Meyer, why should people elect you to go represent Vermont in Congress?
Why not? If you'd like some more reasons, go try to find my CD. I gave away a bunch of them out there when I was collecting the signatures to get here on the ballot, and I'm not going to bother you with any more of my blather. Here is some from Walt Whitman. I celebrate myself and sing myself, and what I assume you shall assume, for every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. I loaf and invite my soul. I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. My tongue, every atom of my blood, formed from this soil, this air, born here of parents, born here from parents the same, and their parents the same. I, now 37 years old, in perfect health begin, hoping to cease not till death. Creeds and schools in abeyance, retiring back a while, sufficed it what they are, but never forgotten. I harbor for good or bad, I permit to speak at every hazard. Nature without check, with original energy, houses and rooms are full of perfumes. The shelves are crowded with perfumes. I breathe the fragrance myself and know it and like it. The distillation would intoxicate me also, but I shall not let it. The atmosphere is not a perfume. It has no taste of the distillation. It is odorless. It is for my mouth forever. I am in love with it. I will go to the bank by the wood and become undisguised and naked. I am mad for it to be in contact with me. The smoke of my own breath, echoes, ripples, buzzed whispers, love root, silk thread, crotch and vine. My respiration and inspiration, the beating of my heart, the passing of blood and air through my lungs, the sniff of green leaves and dry leaves, and of the shore and dark-colored sea rocks, and of hay in the barn. I'll skip ahead. The past and present wilt. I have filled them, emptied them, and proceed to fill my next fold of the future. Listener up there, what have you to confide in me? Look in my face while I snuff the sidle of evening. Talk honestly, no one else hears you, and I stay only a minute longer. Do I contradict myself? Very well then, I contradict myself. I am large, I contain multitudes. I concentrate towards them that are nigh. I wait on the door slab. Who has done his day's work? Who will soonest be through with his supper? Who wishes to walk with me? Will you speak before I am gone? Will you prove already too late? The spotted hawk swoops by and accuses me. He complains of my gab and of my loitering. I too am not a bit tamed. I too am untranslatable.
Thank you.
I sound my barbaric yawp over the roofs of the world.
And Matthew Andrews, your closing statement, why should you represent Vermont in Congress?
Right. Well, I'm so glad that Chris mentioned the pipeline. In fact, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that October 27th, 3 p.m. in Montpelier, in front of the State House, Rising Tide is hosting an action to try and reorient the position of Vermont, which is our government seems to be on course to approving this pipeline. And so there's going to be a major action again. That's October 27th at 3 p.m. in front of the State House in Montpelier. You know, one of my great political inspirations in history, people have mentioned others, mine is Eugene Debs. He was a labor leader. He was the most popular socialist candidate for president in history. And he said, you know, if I could lead you to socialism, somebody else would lead you out. So, and I think that's important to remember for any candidate who's running for office, because I can give you the best program, but unless you really take responsibility to make it real, not just on election day, but every day, by building your union in your workplace, by building alternative political parties, by building co-ops, community groups, mass social movements, that's what shapes history. You can make it your own, and that's really about taking responsibility for what government does. I just want to mention briefly, because we didn't get to talk about it, the issue of climate change, which I think adds urgency to this whole issue. You know, climate scientists are predicting that a 6 degrees Celsius increase in global temperatures is on the way if we don't act very quickly. And it would lead to catastrophic change. It would change the planet that gave rise to human civilization. And how are we going to get the fossil fuel industry to leave that coal in the ground, which is the only solution? It's not going to be through taxation. It's not going to be through any market mechanisms. We really need to nationalize the fossil fuel industry. And if it were up to me, my policy would be that those CEOs and board of directors, they ought to be going to jail for their crimes against the planet. And the fossil fuel industry, and the investors ought to be told no compensation for the money that was spent on, you know, that they've invested through their antisocial policy.
Okay,
and,
that's 2 minutes.
I just want to wrap up by saying that I think that that is the only way, a national program is the only way that we're going to reorient the national energy industry towards renewable energies.
Thank you.
It's just not going to happen through a private system.
And Jerry Trudell, you're of the Energy Independence Party. What's your main reason for running? Why do you want to go out there and represent Vermont in Congress?
I'm glad you asked that. And let me stare you in the eyeballs and say, because I'm sick and tired of a permanent recession economy. Let me repeat that. I am sick and tired of a permanent recession economy. And so are you. And so I want to give Congress a good, swift kick in the pants, because that's what they need and deserve. These congressmen are members of the most elite men's club, it's mostly a men's club still, in the world. And they are detached from the hardship that we face. I personally face, and you personally face. That being said, I have more than angst, and I have more than emotions. I have ideas, and those ideas should be judged on their own merits at face value, and those ideas, I believe, would jumpstart the economy and also solve the problem of global warming, because we can build a 21st century zero-emission energy economy and prosperity for all. So once again, prosperity for all is why I'm running. I believe it's possible. Peter Welch on his website says we've got a long road ahead. We've got to sacrifice. He may not believe it's possible. I believe it's possible. We have the skills, the tools, and the dreams to create a prosperity for all economy for all of us, a full employment economy, I might add. So I want you to go to my website, jerrytrudelforcongress.com. Read about the 1% solution. Read about the rest of my proposals. And by the way, you know what we could do? I did some math on this, Peter. We could take all of the cow manure in the state of Vermont and power 100,000 households with it and also solve that problem very simply. This is the type of thinking and proposals that we need to make. We need ambitious proposals. We need more than a tax credit on electric vehicles. Peter, we need substantial key proposals. And this is my chance to tell my congressman that. So that's why you should vote for me if you think it's time to give Congress a good swift kick in the pants. Thanks for the yellow, what you call it there. Yay! Thank you all.
Okay. And Mark Donka, you're running against Peter Welch, who's been representing Vermont in Congress for a number of years now. What sets you apart? Why should Vermonters choose you to run the state?
The reason they should choose me is, I mean, we've got Congress right now with a 15% approval rating, which is horrible. You know, the American public keeps sending people back there over and over again, and their rating stays down. You know, is anybody happy with that? Are they happy with what Congress is doing? Not with that kind of an approval rating. I'm running for Congress because I am really scared at the direction our country is going. We are on a collision course with disaster. You know, we're 17.7 or 8 or whatever trillion dollars in debt right now.